The binding on Armenian manuscripts has remained consistent for over a millennium. Even the earliest surviving complete bindings show characteristic features such as herringbone sewing of the text block over double cords attached to thin wooden boards. In addition, the board-to-text attachment is strengthened by a cloth spine lining and an endband that is sewn through the boards. The Armenian endband is a compound endband consisting of a primary endband sewn around a cord support, over which a secondary endband is sewn using 3 additional cords and at least 3 silk threads of different colors to make a chevron design. When the boards are attached and the spine is lined with fabric, make 3 holes on each of the boards that are staggered and not aligned, about 2 to 3 centimeters from the head and tail of the top edge of the board. Stand the book in front of you with the forage facing you and the boards open. To make working easier, secure the template primary cord with tape to the edge of the backboard. That is where I will start the sewing. The cord should extend at least 2 centimeters behind the holes on the board. Thread a size 14 needle with 25.3 linen thread. Working from inside the board to the outside, go through the first hole, leaving at least 3 centimeters of thread as a tail on the inside board. To keep the thread from moving, I have taped it down. Go back into the same hole to create a loop, and this will be the first tie down. The same hole will be used to create at least 6 loops or tie downs. The amount of sewing thread required is usually calculated by doubling the length of the number of tie downs plus 20 centimeters more. Make sure the tie downs sit next to each other on the cord. The thread is long and should be pulled through carefully to avoid knots. Notice how I am using my needle to create space between the threads as they come out of the hole. The tie downs should be snug but not too tight, as that will flatten the cord, and as you start to make the secondary chevron sewing, the tie downs may become too tight and push the cord off the board edge. Be very careful not to split the existing threads as you go through the holes with the needle. After completing 7 tie downs in the first hole, move into the second hole and continue working in the same way. After completing the second hole, move to the third hole, complete another 7 tie downs. Here, I'm going into the joint with my needle at the same depth as the second hole on the board. Depending how wide the joint is, you will pack it with 2 or 3 tie downs. After doing 3 tie downs, I go into the middle of the first section using the hole from the first sewing station to come out on the spine. In Armenian binding, all sewing holes are supported and there is no kettle stitches. Point of transition in the Armenian endband requires some manipulation of the thread with one's fingers to set it properly. Then continue working the rest of the primary sewing in the same way, going through the center of each section using the hole from the first sewing station. Because I didn't want to work with a long thread, here I'm adding more thread by making a square knot that rests in the fold close to the sewing hole. After ending the last section, sew the primary endband across the front joint exactly in the same way as the back joint, using the same number of tie downs. As the transition to the board is made, again 7 tie downs are required for each hole. To finish, after making the last loop, come out onto the outside of the front board and tape down the tail of the thread. Before binding the book, the tape threads will be fanned out and adhered to boards with paste. Note how the even tension of the primary sewing has created a fanning out of the leaves. Before proceeding to the next stage, it is important to make sure that the threads are next to each other and not twisted, especially at the holes. Here, I'm using an awl to count the threads. The secondary endband sewing creates a chevron design. The design will be woven with different colored silk threads over 3/4 of the two different thicknesses shown here. A 2-ply cord for the first and second row and a 10-ply cord for the third row. The 2-ply cord is double the length of the 10-ply cord, and that is the same length as the primary sewing cord support. The chevron endband will have 3 colors and be made with 5 needles. Starting from the right to the left, number 1 needle has a doubled black thread. Number 2 and number 3 needles have doubled red threads in each. Number 4 has doubled black thread, and number 5 has doubled white thread. Place the needles in order from the right to the left on the cushion, as this helps avoiding tangling threads and mistake in color order. Start with needle number 1, pick up the first tie down and go under it, directing the needle from the right to the left. Leave at least a 2.5 centimeters tail on the board. Take needle number 2 with the doubled red thread, pick up the second tie down and go under it, directing the needle from the right to the left. Leave at least a 2.5 centimeters tail on the board. Continue to follow these steps using needles number 3, 4 and 5 to pick up tie downs 3, 4 and 5 similarly, leaving a tail in each case. Always return the needles to the cushion, placing them in order. After picking up the first 5 tie downs, collect the tails and pull them snug and tape them to the board at an angle. Take the first 2-ply cord, place it on the head of the book and tape it down to the board. Take the needle number 1 with the black thread from the cushion, go over the cord and pick up the 6 tie down, pushing the needle under the cord from the right to the left. Return the needle to the cushion, placing it after the last needle. Continue follow these steps using needles number 2, 3, 4 and 5 in order, picking up the tie downs following the 6th one. Here, all 5 threads have been worked in order once, and we can see the beginning of the design forming. Continue working in this manner until the end of the row. Either a needle or a fingernail can be a useful tool to untwist the threads as needed. It is very important to avoid catching fibers of the cords or the threads of the tie down with the needle. I find it helpful to use an awl to help pull the threads to keep them from twisting so they can stay parallel. Repeat these steps until you reach the end of the row. At the end of the first row, I find it easier to fold the first cord to form the second cord for the second row of the endband. You can also cut the cord in half and use them separately. Continue working with the last needle of the first row. Go over the second cord, pick up the 6 tie down above the first cord, and go under the second cord, directing the needle from the left to the right. Next in order, using the white thread needle, I go over the second cord, pick up the 7 tie down above the first cord, and then go under the second cord, directing the needle from the left to the right. I'm using my fingers to sit the threads properly and match the colors from both rows to create the chevron design. Repeat the same steps with other colored threads in the same order until you pick up the last tie down at the end of the second row. Make sure to go under the tie down without splitting the threads. As you can see, it is not easy. Now, the angled windings of the threads on the two cords are mirroring each other and really bringing out the chevron design. It is important to occasionally check that you are picking the correct tie down with the right colored silk thread. As you see, my white thread has twisted and I'm trying to untwist it here. After reaching the end of the row, I have to make a knot that anchors the first and second cords together before I can move to the final and third row of the endband. After making sure that my 5 threads are in order, I begin my knot. Taking the next colored needle in the design order, I go over the second and first cords and then using the needle go under the cords between the first and second tie downs and pushing the needle straight up. Repeat the same steps with the second and third needles. The more colors you use to make your knot, the more of the chevron design at the end of the row will be covered. The number of colors you use is optional. I have used 3. Take the last working needle, the black thread in this case, pick up the 6th tie down, pushing the needle from the right to the left, leaving a loop. Then place the 3rd cord, which is the 10-ply cord, into the loop and pull the thread snug. Tape down the end of the 3rd cord to make working the endband easier. Now, with the next needle, I have to go over the 3rd cord and pick up the 7th tie down above the 2nd cord and go under the 3rd cord with the needle going from the right to the left. Continue working in this way to complete the 3rd row. Keep the colors in order and do not let the threads twist. After working to the end of the row, it is time to make the final knot. There is no standard way of doing this. The method I used is not shown here. I took the next colored needle in the design order and went over all 3 cords and picked up the last tie down with the needle angled from the left to the right. I repeated these steps with the 2nd needle in the correct color order and picked the 2nd to last tie down. I repeated these steps with 3rd, 4th, and 5th needles in order, picking the 3rd, 4th, and 5th tie downs from the end. This is the same way I made the knot at the end of the 2nd row. Pull the thread snug, cut the threads leaving about 2.5 centimeters and line them together to paste them down. The cord supports will be cut close to the edge of the design before binding. I'm making sure that most of the cords supporting the secondary chevron sewing are above the edge of the text block and not getting squeezed or hidden by the board. From the Preservation Directorate at the Library of Congress.